What is your ride? Better get the hell out of here now, because some sh*t is about to go down story. My friends and I were in an in-and-out burger in La about 10 years ago. We saw one guy go into the restroom, closely followed by about 8 more. Suddenly there was an incredible ruckus from the bathroom, body slamming into the walls repeatedly, sounds like sinks being torn off the walls, but no speaking or yelling whatsoever. Luckily, there was a security guard in the restaurant. He listened for a moment, stood up, and then jogged to his car and drove away. Needless to say, we didn't stick around to see what was going on in there, but it couldn't have been good. I was doing charity work in high school, just outside of a smaller mountain city in Guatemala, Jalapa. We took one afternoon off to head into the city and check out the markets and whatnot. Riding around the city in the bed of pickups trucks, about 15 of us, extremely common there, we noticed that there wasn't much activity and a lot of the shops were closed. A local who recognized our organization started yelling when we drove by and flagged us down, so we stopped. He was in the middle of setting up a roadblock and basically told us to get the fuck out of the city as fast as possible. Reason being, there was a big protest/riot planned for that day against Canadian mining operations taking advantage of the surrounding regions. This is a small, almost third world, militaristic Central American country. Every single one of us was Canadian. We could have very easily become the perfect bargaining tool for these rebel groups. Needless to say, we got out of there as quick as humanly possible. I was at this open-air nightclub in Montezuma, Costa Rica. The group I was traveling with went to bed, so I was at the bar by myself, drinking Imperial, and taking in the scene. I was really drunk. The bar was packed, and loud and hot and humid. The crowd consisted of young local guys with their girlfriends, stray dogs walking around the dancer floor, and a group of high school girls, American or Canadian, with 2 older male chaperones, in their mid-30s/early 40s. The high school girls were all dancing with the 2 teachers and were taking turns making out with them in a strange and systematic manner, almost like they were brainwashed. The 2 teachers were having the time of their lives, glancing at each other with huge grins on their faces between makeout sessions with the underage girls. I'm totally engrossed in their group dynamic when suddenly a military truck full of police officers with assault rifles pulls up to the bar and swarms in. All the young Costa Ricans take off running in all directions. The bar had no walls, so it emptied pretty fast. The high school's girls and their teachers ran away too. The cops sprint out of the bar, following the Costa Rican guys into the darkness. I remained glued to my bar stool, beer in hand, mouth agape, brow furrowed. By the time I realized I better get the fuck out of here, it was already over. I sat there alone. Just me, my beer, and a couple stray dogs. I was at Red Rocks Amphitheater in Colorado for an ass show. I left the concert early to grab something out of my car. On the way, I passed a suspicious looking individual, who moments later fired off a shotgun into the air. I sprinted all the way to my car. It turns out this maniac was trying to kill one of the openers, Schoolboy Q. Nobody was hurt, and it barely even made the news, but a lot of people could have died if he made it inside the concert. I was driving back to school after Thanksgiving break in the rain about 8 years ago, and as I pass by an exit I see a pickup coming down the entrance ramp next to me really fast, like recklessly fast. I think to myself I better get ahead of this guy, so I don't have to deal with merging with him, so I put my foot on the gas. About 10 seconds later I look in my rearview mirror to see the pickup about 100 foot behind me spinning across all 4 lanes. Then a semi which was trying to swerve to avoid him collides and smashes him straight into the barrier as it turns fully sideways across the highway. Huge bang sound as the pickup basically disintegrated. I had to pull over at the next rest stop just to calm down. Raider 9 a preseason game. I got free tickets, so I brought my girlfriend with me since she had never been to a football game. Game was at Candlestick Park, which is in the ghetto in SF. Game was rowdy from the start with fights breaking out all over the stadium. I made a point to not drink because I wanted to have my wits about me the whole time. It got so crazy that we left early, and as we were leaving, a bunch of cops and ambulances were headed towards the stadium. We got out of the city and my bro started texting me asking if I was okay cause there were shootings. Never felt so uncomfortable at a sporting event in my life. Front stage for Lamb of God, I think maybe 2012ish. Suddenly people started leaving before the next song. What I didn't realize at the time was I was in the middle of a world record attempt at the largest wall of death at a festival. I haven't noped any harder than that, I don't think. I was doing a semester abroad in London. At the time there were concerns about bombings on the underground trains. During our orientation one of our guides mentioned that if you ever heard the voice on the underground pass system ask for Inspector Sands, that was code to alert the underground staff that there was some kind of emergency without panicking the riders. One night, after class, I stopped at a restaurant. It was a McDonald's. Sue me, and the cashier forgot my order, causing my meal to be delayed. Once I got my food and finished eating, I headed to the nearest tube station to board a train home. And heard, playing on repeat, "Will Inspector Sands report to the office?" or something similar. I then noticed that a horde of police cars was converging on the area. I turned right the fuck around and took a bus home. Turns out it wasn't a bombing. Someone had pushed someone else onto the tracks in front of a train. Still, I thought for half a second that a shitty McDonald's cashier might have saved me from getting blown up. I was visiting Belgium with my dad a couple of years back. I love arcades and found one in Ostend where we were staying. I was spending a couple of hours of my free time in there while my dad was round the corner in a sports bar watching football. I was playing a game of pinball when I noticed this guy who was just hanging around near me, not really doing anything, just staring in another direction towards some games. I finished my game and started to leave. He followed me. I noticed this and stopped and pretended to browse some of the prizes you can win with tickets. He stopped as well and pretended to look around. At this point I swiftly walked straight out the arcade. He followed me, and as soon as we were on the street a guy leaning against the wall joined up with him and followed me about 10 feet back. These two were the worst muggers ever, and I picked up on it straight away. They were obviously thinking I was going to walk home if I was local and even lived there, and wait until we got out of the city center to try something. I went round the bend at the end of the road and straight into the sports bar where my dad was. They didn't follow me in and just kept walking past. I breathed a sigh of relief and enjoyed the rest of my evening. This is more of a row shit. I should have gotten the fuck out of here, but still. I was at a party senior year of high school, one of those big ones where you gotta pay $5 to get in. Hundreds of people, etc. Me and my friends are standing in the backyard, smoking joints and taking bumps out of the end of a poly, etc. Just jetting fucked up and having a grand old time. All of a sudden, there's this massive smashing sound from the house. The French door flies open and about 50 people spill out, screaming at each other and fighting. I learned later that it was a gang fight between a group of Mexican guys and a group of black guys. Someone grabbed the wrong ass or something, and shit went south real quick. Before I continue, let me explain just who I was. 5'10" white kid who went to a private school and had never been in a fight that lasted more than a few punches. Now I'm in a small riot, and everyone around me is either screaming and panicking, or fighting fists, smashed bottles, knives, etc. Thankfully no guns were pulled. I'm standing in the middle of a literally bloody gang fight and it's fucking terrifying. Luckily, I was with my friend who we called Bigger. He was this dude named Aaron who stood at about 6 feet 6 inches and a solid 280 lbs. Massive Linebacker type. As soon as the fighting reached us, he grabbed my arm, pulled me behind him, and said hold on to my shoulder dude. Then he just started marching through the crowd to the gate. This motherfucker was shoving people left and right, parting the sea of violence like fucking Moses. I held on for dear life, and followed him all the way out. He 100% saved my ass. That was by far and away the scariest situation I've ever been in. I found out from some friends who stayed that it ended up getting even worse. Multiple people were stabbed, the back fence was smashed down when fighting spilled into the street, and a metric shitton of cops/ambulances came right after we got out of there. I'm forever grateful for Bigger saving my ass. If not for him, I definitely have been caught in the crossfire of that one. I'll give you one of my dad. He was a nuclear engineer. Now you know this story is headed in a bad direction. For Ontario Hydro. He had made several complaints that the Pickering nuclear power plant was not updating their inspections of the heavy water containment. Nothing was done. My father knew there was going to be a high pressure test scheduled for August. You know what he does? He scheduled his 3-week summer vacation to begin at the end of July. On August 2nd, 1992, Pickering had a heavy water leak. So I'm watching the evening news. The president of Ontario Hydro is giving a press conference. Everything is fine. Then as soon as that press conference is over, my phone rings. It's the president of Ontario Hydro asking where my dad is. They got to figure out how to clean up this mess. I said he's camping way up in the Cape Breton Highlands of Nova Scotia. So he asks, did my dad bring his cell phone with him? And I'm looking at the cell phone sitting right there on the kitchen counter. Obviously not. And even if he did bring it with him, there's no way the mountains of Nova Scotia had cell phone coverage in 1992. So he tells me to call all my relatives in Nova Scotia to track him down, which I tried, no luck. Great big nuclear spill, not his problem. And when my dad finally did turn up 2 weeks later, he was all, not my circus, not my problem. Like he knew exactly what was going to happen, and the people who ignored it can deal with it themselves. I was on a motorcycle trip through Mexico in 2011/12, right when all the super violent stuff was going down. We had stopped around noon in a small town, Playa Azul, in Michoacan, home of the most violent cartel at the time, La Familia, to rest and get a little cash. The only ATM was just outside the police building, which itself was surrounded by open fields. In the span of literally 1 minute, everyone in the town disappeared. It was the most eerie thing ever. Bustling small town 1 minute, ghost town the next. A couple minutes after that, a bunch of helicopters appeared and commandos started to rappel out. We didn't want to be there when the bullets started to fly, so we got on our bikes and took off. Only problem was that the army had, at the same time, set up roadblocks on the 3 main roads. Luckily, they saw we were terrified gringos and immediately waved us through. We were the only people they let through, from what I saw. Obviously they were trying to capture some big drug lord, but I never did find out the whole story. This happened about 12 to 13 years ago. I was about 10 years old at the time. Me and my father were sitting in our car having food at a food truck. While we were sitting there, some drunk men came and parked right in front of us, blocking our way. After some time, the car behind us honked so they could leave. My dad honked at the car in front of us, but they just waved at us saying they are not moving. My dad went out and told this to the car behind us. Those were 2 young men as well. They went and asked him to move. Drunk men again gave some vulgar sign and told them to fuck off. This dude straight up punched the window, breaking it. Drunk men came out to fight, while my dad just picked me up and walked away from the scene. We were watching from a distance when the dude who was behind us took his gun out and shot the drunk car guy in the head point blank. Then they calmly walked back to their car, and since everyone ran away, backed up their car and went their way. I have a few more, but this was on top of my mind. Was leaving a bush party with a friend. To do this, we had to climb a really steep hill. Not too tough, because there were little trees growing out of it to grasp. About halfway up, we see flashlights and someone yelled cops. My friend and I turned around and went down. I saw 2 kids rolling down the hill hitting trees. By the time we got to the bottom, I decided I should get the fuck out of there, but will not. Gave my friend a beer and he ran off. I laid down with my beer in some long grass and didn't move. They never found me, and I heard them laughing, saying things like, haha, this shit is what I signed up for. Eventually I fell asleep, and I woke up hours later and walked home.